Welcome to Soul Study, the podcast where we explore personal growth, spirituality, and the deeper questions of what it means to consciously create a life we love. Think of this as your weekly book club for the soul. Each episode will study powerful ideas from transformative books, reflect how they apply to real life, and gently challenge ourselves to grow together. This isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. It's about remembering that you are energy, you are powerful, and you are always in a state of creation. Here, we take what resonates and leave the rest. So take a breath, open your heart, and get ready to become your most magnetic self. Let's begin today's Soul Study. Hello everyone, Jules here, and welcome back to Soul Study, the podcast to help you become your happiest, healthiest, most magnetic self. It's time. Today's the day. We are finally on to our second book of the podcast. So last week, we did not have a book episode. Last week, I answered some of your guys' questions and comments to my life and also to the Key of Living Law of Attraction. So that was really fun. Thank you guys so much for sending things in. I really appreciate it. And I loved hearing how you guys enjoyed the last book. So once again, if you do want to tell me how you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a comment below, DM me on Instagram. I'd love to connect with you guys about that last book. This week, we are finally on to our next book, which is, boom, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So if you haven't gotten this book, pause the podcast right now, go order this book from the link in the description below, and then come right back and continue, because today, not only are we going to talk about the author and dive in a little bit into him and why we should be listening to him, but we're also going to go through the introduction and chapter 1. So this is going to be kind of a little bit of a longer episode because we do have the author intro, and we also have about 4 quotes from chapter 1 as well that we're going to go over. So make sure you go get that book. And without further ado, let's dive in to the 4 agreements. Let's talk about our author, because it's good to know who's talking to us and why should we listen to them. I have a little bio here. Thank you to Wikipedia and some other sources of who this author was. So I'm just going to read you guys a little bit about the author, and then we will dive into the book. Don Miguel Ruiz was born on August 27th, 1952. He is a Mexican author and spiritual teacher born in Tijuana, Baja California. He is the youngest of 13 children in a family knowledgeable in healing traditions. Raised by his mother, a traditional healer, in the esoteric knowledge of the Toltecs, Ruiz initially pursued a conventional path, earning a medical degree from the National Autonomous University of Mexico and practicing as a neurosurgeon. A near-death experience from a car accident in the early 1970s, followed by a profound spiritual awakening in 1986, led him to abandon medicine and begin teaching Toltec philosophy as a shamanic guide. His landmark book, The 4 Agreements, published in 1997, has sold over 15 million copies in the United States alone, spent over a decade on the New York Times Bestseller list, and has been published in 52 languages worldwide. His other works include The Mastery of Love, The Voice of Knowledge, The Circle of Fire, and The 5th Agreement, all part of the Toltec Wisdom series. In 2002, Ruiz suffered a near-fatal heart attack that left him in a 9-week coma, an experience he later described as a profound spiritual journey that deepened his teachings on impermanence and surrender. He was named one of the Watkins 100 Most Spiritual Influential Living People in 2018 and continues to share his wisdom through his writing and his family. So if you read the introduction, it will tell you a little bit more about the Toltecs and the history behind that culture and philosophy behind it. So what's really cool about him is that he did come from a healing family and had all these ancient, knowledgeable traditions there, but then also did pursue a more conventional path and then realized that wasn't for him. I didn't know until I was doing some research on him that he did have a spiritual awakening and a near-death experience. So I am curious to find out if I can find the story of his near-death experience. So maybe after we read the book, I will try to find that, and that will be one of our in-between book episodes to see if I can find his story. We can talk about it, or I can link of a video of him talking about it. So I'll try to find that for us. One more note about the author. The title Don, that is not his name. Don in Latin American culture is like a name given to someone out of respect. For instance, my boyfriend's family is Nicaraguan, or stepfamily is Nicaraguan, and they called his grandpa Don Bob. So it was a name given out of respect. Once again, this book will dive a little bit more into the Toltec philosophy if you read the introduction. So make sure you read the introduction first, and now let's dive into chapter 1. So we do have 4 quotes that we've taken out of chapter 1. The first quote will be on page 3. It says, "Attention is the ability we have to discriminate and to focus only on that which we want to perceive." So this kind of goes along with confirmation bias. If you have never heard of confirmation bias, really what confirmation bias is that I guess the best way to describe it is maybe one day, like how many times have you seen a red car? Probably never. But the next time you get into the car and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to count how many red cars I see. Then you start seeing so many red cars. It's because you're putting your attention onto it. So that's kind of what confirmation bias is. It's like you are putting that attention into it, and therefore you are only seeing the things you want to see or the things you're going to believe to see. And this kind of dives into the programming of us humans in a way, in the sense of what we've been taught to believe in school, in church, by our parents, by our teachers, by our peers. Like this all kind of goes into where we are giving our attention, because growing up, we did give our attention away to our teachers, to our elders, to our peers. And wherever we are giving our attention to, that is what's forming our belief systems. This also kind of goes back to what we learned in the Key to Living the Law of Attraction, with where your attention goes, energy flows. So wherever you are putting your attention, you are living in that world and that belief system of what you think the world is going to be like. And sometimes that doesn't come from what you have it does come from what you've experienced, but maybe it doesn't even come from you. Maybe your worldview comes from what the people around you tell you what your worldview should be. So that's kind of really interesting. And this is kind of what they talk about with giving your attention away within the first chapter. Where we place our attention has the ability to program us and create habits and patterns that we show in our everyday lives. So once again, where we are placing our attention is programming us to create habits and patterns and actions that we take on and use in our everyday life. To expand upon this a little bit, this is kind of the ideology of someone who is a little bit more closed-minded. They're discriminating against any other opinion of any other belief system because they are so dead set in placing their attention and their belief system on this one thing. So they're only perceiving that. And I'm sure we've all met someone in our lives that they are so focused in. They're giving so much of their attention away on this one belief system, on this one thing, that they're missing out on other points of view, that they're missing out on other details maybe behind a situation or belief, because they literally aren't allowing themselves to perceive it because they are so stuck in that one thing that they're giving their attention to. I've definitely met people like this in my life. I'm sure you've met people like this in your life as well. Now, it's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's necessarily their fault, because everything is everyone's fault. We all need to take accountability and responsibility. But the way that our society and system is placed is that as we are growing up, we are giving our attention away and forming our foundational belief systems on mostly like our parents and our family and our peers and our society that's around us at that time as we are growing up. Because as we grow up, and even now, we are being shown how to act, what to believe in, and what the world should be. And we get this through not only the people around us, but also like through the news, through the social media that we are consuming. That is all like what we are giving our attention to in those ways are teaching us what we should be putting our beliefs into. So where have I seen giving my attention away and recognizing my belief systems in my life? Currently in my life, I have been taking a look about where I am placing my attention. What am I giving my attention away to? And that really, right now, specifically, I've been watching Instagram like a lot, and I need to stop giving that my attention because that is programming me to have certain thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Because your thoughts really do affect your feelings. Your thoughts can trigger chemical reactions in your brain, and we have seen this through our last book. And so now that we are recognizing that we are giving our attention away, we have to be a little bit more careful of what we give our attention to. So I have seen where I have been putting my attention lately in my life, and I have also seen what habits, thought patterns, and behaviors have happened because of it. This isn't just something that is currently happening. I've also been looking into my past and noticed, what did I do to not only because we're talking about what we're placing our attention into, but there's also a flip side of how are we receiving attention? How did we want to get attention? Because that has a lot to do with how we perceive the world to be and what we have made agreements about within our lives. Because I've been looking at how when I was a child, that I would receive attention through helping others and or just sacrificing what I wanted to do because other people, like, we needed to do what everybody else was doing, or I didn't want to cause a scene because there was other things happening. And what that has instilled in me with like getting good praise and attention for being that way is that has shaped my people-pleasing tendencies. And I have recognized that was what has given me people-pleasing tendencies. And that's not like a bad thing, but it's just something that now I know that I'm allowed to set up boundaries. I'm allowed to say no. And if people get upset with me for stating my boundaries, maybe I should not be around those people. And that's fine. And that's something I've learned because I have understood how I wanted to get attention. I'm also recognizing, like, am I still doing those things to receive attention? Like, am I still placing those habits to receive attention? And the nice thing about being a performer is that my job is to make sure people are having a good time, making sure people are laughing and smiling and being entertained. And so kind of the people-pleasing psychology there has actually played a healthy role in my work. So now I'm trying to just make sure that I'm reserving those habits and behaviors and that seeking of attention for my job, because that's not me. That's like a character I'm placing on to do my job, rather than doing that in my everyday life, because I don't need to sacrifice my needs or comfortability for someone else's. And so that's something I'm currently learning about, like, obtaining my attention, but I'm also taking note of where I'm placing my attention. Where are my belief systems coming from? Because something that a lot of people don't recognize is that as you get older, at least this happened to me, and this might happen to someone at some point in their lives, is that you realize that everything that you believe in is you only believe in it because some people told you to. Like, there was really, at first, maybe no real evidence behind it because people told you to believe in that thing. And maybe you only found evidence because of confirmation bias, that you were looking for it because you had that belief system instilled into you at a young age already. So those are just some questions that I had growing up. It was like, where did my beliefs come from? Who gave me those beliefs? Was it something that I came to the conclusion to myself, or was it something that someone told me I had to believe in? Those are some questions that I asked myself. Now, you can start asking yourself those questions as well. You can try to see, like, where have my beliefs been coming from? Like, where was I giving my attention to form those beliefs? That's a good question to ask. And also notice on how you like to receive attention, because that'll help open up some interesting paths for you too. Like, do you remember as a child doing certain things and getting attention from them? And how do you recognize if you still do those things to this day? Like, maybe they look a little bit different, but what are the habits that you learned from getting attention from doing those things that you are still doing today to get attention? Just like kind of look at it. Cause I have seen myself, oh my gosh, I've caught myself doing things that I was like, oh my gosh, I totally feel like a child right now, because I definitely did those when I was a kid to receive attention. And I can totally see how I'm doing the same thing, but just maybe a little bit more like different language and different actions because I'm an adult, but like I can see the similarities there. And it's very, very fascinating to be like, whoa, hold on. That was totally the child self in me wanting to get attention. Like, just pay attention to those things. It's very interesting. Start putting your attention there. See where it goes. Quote number 2, we're going to expand on this a little bit. That's on page 5. And it says, as soon as we agree, we believe it. And this is called faith. To have faith is to believe unconditionally. So we're expanding upon our attention. We agree to the things that we are paying attention to. Now we have a belief system. This is what they call the domestication of humans. It is teaching us to believe and therefore to act and to behave a certain way. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, there definitely are beliefs systems that could be very beneficial to your lives that are spoken about in society. But overall, I would say that society wants us to conform to a certain demeanor. Society wants us to conform to a certain way to make sure that everything is normal and easily controlled. But that's a story for another day. What this quote is telling us is that if we start to agree with something, we start to believe in it. And then that something we agree with may also not be true, because sometimes what we believe in isn't always true. And then that's where it shows that it's okay to change our minds and to change our belief systems. Like, that is so important. But what could this look like? Like, what could having a false belief system look like? Now, sure, this could obviously be taken politically, socially, big issues like that. There could be evidence against something that you believe in. There also could be evidence for something that you do believe in. And those couldn't necessarily be true, could necessarily not be true. But besides like the big outside issues, this can also be shown. This could also happen. These false agreements that we have made can happen within ourselves on a smaller level. For instance, this could look like someone degrading you in a certain way, and even you agreeing with what they degraded you about and believing them. But that doesn't mean that it's true, because if someone comes up to you and is like, hey, you're not very smart. And if someone tells you that, you might start believing that you're not very smart. And you're like, you know what? They're right. I'm not very smart. Now, your friends and family and other people around you may be like, no, that's not true, because you are smart. And so even though you did believe something, and maybe you're still getting, like, if you're in school and you're like still getting straight A's, but you don't believe you're smart, like, there is evidence to prove otherwise. So that kind of goes to show that even though you may believe something, that doesn't mean it's necessarily true. So that's why we need to start questioning our beliefs. Now, in the book, they use an example of growing up and being called like a good girl or a good boy. So like a good kid, bad kid. And when someone was being called a bad child for lashing out, it could just be like they aren't a bad kid because they were lashing out. It could just be that they may have been wanting attention, and that lashing out was the only way they could get it. And so them being called a bad kid for just wanting attention could be embedded into them, but that doesn't make it true. Wanting attention doesn't make you good or a bad kid. That's just what you learned what to do in order to get the attention you were seeking. So, but once again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Does that make sense? I hope this is making sense, because it seems like a simple concept, but then like actually thinking about it, it can get a little bit more complicated. But I'm sure we've all agreed in our past with our teachers, priests, parents, pastors, friends, on so many things that construct our belief system on how the world works. But maybe some things from those teachers may not be true, or maybe they are just one truth of many. Maybe something that they said is not the only truth, but part of a bigger truth, or part of more truths that are out there. And so we need to start, as humans, we need to start understanding and looking at what are our beliefs? What are we starting to have faith in that make us believe in something unconditionally? And should we maybe relook at those? I will say for myself, I have seen this in my lives before. I used to think that I was not flexible because I was one of the least flexible dancers, because I grew up dancing, that I was one of the less flexible dancers in the group. And that made me feel very inadequate. And I remember talking to my dad about it when I was a kid. And my dad just said, it's okay that you're not flexible because it's just not in our genes. Like, you're never going to get your splits because no one in our family can do the splits, and that's just not possible. And so in my head for years, I believed that I was not flexible because someone else told me I wasn't. Fast forward to me dancing for like 5 years still consistently. And then I was still trying to get my splits. And I did start seeing myself get a little bit closer. And so the belief that I was not flexible started to shake a little bit, started to get lower, because I was recognizing evidence of that not being the case. And eventually I did get my splits. So that made me change my belief system, because I found and was open-minded enough to believe otherwise and try to figure out otherwise. But that's one instance of, in my life, I had a belief system that wasn't necessarily true. Now, another one that I've seen in my life is people told me before I moved to Vegas that it is not lucrative and that I couldn't be a gig worker. I couldn't work gigs because it's too volatile, it's too uncertain. You never know where your next job's going to be, and there might not be enough jobs for you. And I did believe this for like a hot sec. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was really kind of getting fearful. I was letting those those words that other people were saying kind of sneak their way into my belief system. And so I didn't pursue a lot of things that I saw. But then through, thankfully, other people that I have met, they have helped me change my belief system because I started seeing and finding and being open-minded enough to look for evidence of that other belief system not being true. And so I found other evidence, and I changed and it changed my whole perspective on life. Like what I've learned trying to pursue being a gig worker has changed my perspective on many different aspects of my life and has changed my belief systems entirely. And now my biggest belief system is that I shouldn't have a set, confirmed, airtight belief system. Like my belief system is being open to change. That's kind of where I'm at. And so this is kind of showing and explaining to us that we have these agreements in our life that we have made either consciously or unconsciously that we might not even remember or even recognize at first. So what this book is trying to do is have us dive a little bit deeper and recognize what belief systems do we have and where did they come from. Look at some of the agreements that you have made about life and see where did those agreements come from. If you agree that life is hard and a struggle, look at that belief system. Where did it come from? What if the opposite is true? See if those agreements, those ones that you're thinking about, see if they were yours, if they came from you, or if they came from someone else and they're agreements that you've adopted about the world. So that's how you can start kind of like understanding what agreements you've made in your life. Let's move on to quote number 3. That is on page 11. This says, anything that challenges what you believe is going to make you feel unsafe. Even if the book of law is wrong, it makes you feel safe. So in the pages before this, they talk about the book of law and the victim inside of you and the judge. That you have two people inside of you. You have a judge, you have a victim, and then you have a book of law that is based off of the belief systems that are carried by the judge and the victim. I'm pretty sure that's kind of what it talks about before that. What this quote is saying is that it is normal to feel weird or uncomfortable when you are growing and changing your belief systems. And this is because our brain loves patterns and familiarity. And our brain makes neurological pathways for habits and patterns that connect to our belief systems. They even supply chemicals that trigger through your thoughts and patterns that you can get addicted to keep your world familiar. What does this mean? Some people get addicted to the hormones that feed depression and anxiety because after a long amount of time, it is those patterns and those chemicals that make them feel like things are normal and things are safe. So changing that, disrupting that can be difficult because even if it's something that's good for you, even if you're trying to grow into something or change or expand your beliefs, your brain doesn't recognize it as good. It just recognizes it as different and against the pattern that you've created, which could trigger your brain to make you feel uncomfortable so it stays in the familiar pattern that it's in. I hope that makes sense. Let me kind of break that down once again. I'm going to give it a little bit of an example. So say you are depressed and that has been your state for a very long time. So your brain is used to the chemicals and the thought patterns and the actions that you take when you're depressed. So say you're trying to get out of depression and you have a thought pattern of trying to find one thing that makes you happy every single day. And doing that means you go for a short walk. You're trying to go for a short walk every single day because that's what makes you happy. Now your brain and your body are not familiar to these new happy chemicals, happy actions. And so your brain's like, this is unfamiliar. Your brain starts to feel unsafe because you're like, oh my goodness, this is unfamiliar. And so your book of law at that moment was like, ooh, what is good for me is to be at home and that's it. That's not true. That's not good for you. That's what's making you feel depressed. And so now that you're trying to get out of it, those neurological pathways that were so easy and those patterns that your brain just loves so much are now being disrupted. And so you feel uncomfortable and you feel unsafe. And that doesn't mean that what you're doing is bad for you. It means it's good for you. It means you're changing your neurological pathways and you're changing your patterns. When you are creating these new pathways, when you are challenging what you believe in and it's making you uncomfortable, to create new pathways, to create the creation of anything is going to take effort. It's not going to be easy because the easy path is the path that's already been set. You are trying to forge a new path. And when you are forging a new path, let's say there's a path in the forest and you're walking down it and you're like, this is easy. But maybe the pathway is going through an uncomfortable swamp that mosquitoes are in all the time. And you're like, I would love to not walk down this path full of mosquitoes every day. And then you look over to the side and you could make a path around the swamp, but there's a lot of bushes and there's a lot of rocks that are in the way. So you would have to make a path. You would have to spend effort, days of effort, to cut back the brush that's there, move the rocks that are there. And eventually, after time of creating that new path, you now have the new path of walking around the swamp and not getting bit by mosquitoes anymore instead of continuing down the swamp path being bit by mosquitoes. I hope that makes sense. So it does take effort to create new belief systems, new neural pathways. So just because you're trying to create a better life for yourself, you're trying to create something new and you're having a hard time with it, that is normal. That doesn't mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean it's impossible for you. What's happening is so normal. What's happening is your brain is just feeling unsafe because it is something new and not following the patterns that you have set. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of motivation and gives you a little bit of relief that you are not crazy and you are not unable to do this thing that you think everybody else is doing and having a great life. Like, you are able to do it. You just have to push through and continue even when it's a little bit uncomfortable for your brain. How have I seen this in my life? I have a lot of patterns. I don't want to say a lot. I have a couple specific habits that I would like to repattern. One of those is scrolling on Instagram. I need to stop that shit. So what am I doing? I am actively looking at my phone. And when I see myself even move my finger towards that Instagram app, I stop and I put my phone down and I just kind of I just don't do anything. I'm like, okay, what else can I do? Usually what that means is I have to move myself. I have to write something down. I have to physically do something else besides just sitting in the knowledge of I could open Instagram right now, because Instagram is comfortable and I do feel uncomfortable and a little bit I don't want to say anxious, but a little bit what do I do now when I'm not opening up Instagram because I need to force myself to do something else? So that is a pattern that I am currently trying to dismantle. And I'm trying to believe in myself that I'm not just lazy, that I actually can do this. So I'm trying to repattern that. And I have noticed also, I've noticed this changing my belief systems. I have been doing that throughout my life without even me realizing it. I have changed my belief systems about a lot of different things, one of which is money. And that one's been hard and really uncomfortable because I used to think money was hard to obtain. I still have that belief system a little bit. I'm still working through that one. I also used to think that people that had money just a copious amounts of money. And don't get me wrong, there are some really awful people out there that have a lot of money, but I used to think that money was the root of all evil. Money is why people are evil. And now I'm really repatterning those belief systems. I am trying to disagree with that agreement that I had made. And because I am working through that, I have been noticing that more money has been flowing my way because my thoughts behind it are not that it's bad. My thoughts are that it's good and I can use it in ways in which are good for myself and the people around me. And that is still a belief system that I'm working through. That is still something that I need to tell myself daily. And it has been hard. It does take effort. And even beyond just money, I have even been changing my beliefs about performing, my work, my job, performing, and myself, who I am. Now, how can you kind of look at this within your life? How can you apply this to your life? Look at what habits that you have wanted to put into your life and that you've tried to do, but maybe didn't follow through with it and maybe felt like you couldn't do it. And so you quote unquote failed. You felt like you failed. Did you notice that you were just getting uncomfortable with it? Or did you notice you actually failed? Maybe, honestly, I don't think any sort of habits or new patterns is something you can fail at. I just think it takes more time than people think. And they just have to push past some of that uncomfortability in order to make those patterns possible. And now that you know this about your brain, Give yourself more grace when you're wanting to change patterns. Now that you know that your brain is just gonna be uncomfortable with you creating new patterns, even if they are good for you, you're still gonna be uncomfortable. And now that you know this, maybe it'll give you more motivation to try to do those patterns again. Maybe it'll give you more grace if you slip up one day on doing a habit that you want to start and you didn't do it one day. Like maybe it'll give yourself better motivation to continue even when you feel uncomfortable. So take a look at that. Now, let's move on to our last quote. And our fourth quote today is going to be on page 23. It says, "Each time you break an agreement, all the power you use to create it returns to you." So this is kind of the counter side of all of the hardship that we've kind of been receiving or the hardship we've been recognizing about our original patterns and agreements that we've made. The flip side is that when you break those domesticating agreements that you have made that have been pushing you down, you gain your power back when you break them. You gain all that power back to you when you break them. And it really makes sense because this is showing you how to take power back into your life. Because when you think about it, when you accomplish something that once made you feel uncomfortable, you now feel confident and powerful in that situation. So that just makes sense. And how do you get comfortable and feel powerful in a situation? It's by putting yourself in that situation so many times that you start feeling comfortable in it. So for example, if you had an agreement with yourself that you aren't a good public speaker, but then you start putting yourself in positions that you have to public speak more, eventually you're going to get comfortable with it and break your agreement that you're a bad public speaker. Because now you are a good public speaker because you've done it so many times. So now you have gained that power back from that old agreement. So that's just a quick example. I know that's not an example that works for everyone, but that is an example of how you can gain your power back. And it just makes sense. To me, it just makes sense. Now, another book that talks about this specific gaining your power back from the areas that make you uncomfortable is the book Breaking Loose from the Money Game. It's a great book. It's a very woo-woo, but I really liked a lot of the concepts it has in it. We might go over it on the podcast. But in that book, they call it your eggs of power. You go Easter egg hunting, and your Easter eggs are where you're uncomfortable, and so you find that egg and you get your power back. So when you break those agreements of that uncomfortability, you get the power back that you used to create them in the first place. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. This part makes me really excited. This part makes me really amped up because now, how I do this in my life is I look for areas where I feel uncomfortable and I'm like, oh crap, shoot, I'm uncomfortable there. That means I have to do it. And I'm doing 2 of those currently. I am currently diving in full force into 2 things that make me very uncomfortable. And I am excited about it, but I'm really feeling that uncomfortability. So I'll let you guys know how that goes because it is not comfortable. It is not comfortable, but that means I'm going to grow, and that's why I have to do it. I've kind of adopted this concept in my life, even from a young age, which I didn't even know that this was really a concept. I was just kind of following what I felt I needed to do. And when I was younger, because I also believed this, I used to think that I was so shy, and I made the agreement with myself that I was shy and awkward. That's just the agreement I made with myself through, I don't even know really, if I'm being honest. I think through just what I've seen from other people, because the people I was hanging around were very boisterous, very brave, very vocal. And I just was not very vocal. And so I alluded that to being shy and awkward. Then one day, that was the agreement I made with myself. And that really kept me from doing a lot of things and made me have a lot of anxiety, I feel like. Then in high school, I met a friend, and I will never forget this day. We were on a bus. And my friend, we were talking about because they were a nerd, I was a nerd. We were talking about if we wanted to write main characters, what would they be like? What kind of main character would we want to be? And my friend told me that it was possible to have main character energy in your everyday life. And she also told me, she was so straight up. What they said to me was that I didn't have main character energy. And honestly, that sounds so rude, but honestly, it is exactly what I needed to hear. And thank God for this person. Cause they were yeah, you don't have main character energy right now. But they were but I totally see you. You totally could have it. I could totally see that for you. And I was they said it just so matter of fact that I was you know what? Yeah, I agree. I'm really not main character energy right now, but I agree that is something that I could step into. And so I started then to take steps to put myself into uncomfortable situations that made my brain very uncomfortable. And then that's also how I broke so many agreements that I made with myself. I don't believe I'm shy and awkward anymore. Sometimes awkward, we're all sometimes awkward, but I believe that I am a brave, confident, personable person that's willing to be uncomfortable and grow. That's who I believe I am now. I definitely did not believe that I was that person back then, but now that I believe that's who I am. And that's because I did the work. I put the effort and the energy in to break those agreements, and I received all that power back. Personally, this is so weird to say, and I do think people think I'm crazy, and I've never really actually talked about this perspective, but I find, and this may also be because I had a lot of chaos in my life growing up, I now find fear in being too comfortable. And not in the sense of I can relax because I'm happy and content with my life. Not like that. When I'm feeling too comfortable, I can see where the laziness in me likes to sneak in. I can see where I can start recognizing new areas of growth because I'm ooh, I'm really comfortable here. And I don't have to grow anymore if I don't want to. But then I don't know, that causes fear to be inside of me. And now I do enough personal work to recognize areas of myself I want to grow and work on. So when I feel that uncomfortability or that comfortability, I start being okay, where can I be uncomfortable? I start searching for the areas to grow in, because I know every single time I have dove into uncomfortability, I have gained 10 times more than I would just continuing my life on the path that I was going. So every time I have been uncomfortable, I have grown immensely. So now I get kind of excited when I'm uncomfortable. These two things that I'm extremely uncomfortable about doing right now in my life. I am doing them and I know it's going to be so good for me and I'm going to gain so much power from it and I'm going to feel amazing afterwards. But right now I just have to get through that growth spurt, and you can do it too. So really just kind of sum all that up. What I'm doing is I'm seeing my uncomfortabilities as hints to where my hidden power is. So you can do. And you can start breaking those agreements that you have with yourself. So yeah, that's how I've seen it in my life. What you can do, how you can use this to find those things in your life is first of all, find some evidence. What used to be uncomfortable for you that now you're confident in because you've had practice and time? What used to be uncomfortable for you that now you're comfortable in? First, find that evidence. Secondly, look at all the belief systems about yourself that you wish you didn't have, and then see what it would be like to break those agreements that you've made with yourself. What does that look like? What could you do to break that agreement? Start taking a look at this. Start seeing what you can do in your life to become the person you want to be. What agreements do you have to get rid of to replace them with the things that you want to believe that you have in yourself? Because you totally do. You totally do. You can shape yourself to be whoever you want to be. And anyone that says you can't is lying, because you can. Now, it is not easy. It is not simple. That is why we are doing this podcast, is to learn these things, have a community that supports your growth. So if you feel scared or unsure or uncomfortable or don't even know what the next best step is because you feel paralyzed, please DM me. Please talk to me. I would love to try to help you out and connect and give you the motivation and the encouragement to go on and live your dreams. So that's what this book is going to help us with. Next up, we are going to read chapter 2 next week and talk about the first out of the 4 agreements. And these are going to be agreements that are going to change your life. To recap, we talked about where has our attention been going? What are agreements that we've made in our life? Changing our agreements is uncomfortable, and it's normal for your brain to feel that way. And whenever you break an agreement, you gain the power back that you used when you created it. So we talked about agreements in general, what our agreements have been, how have we had agreements that we consciously and unconsciously created for ourselves, and now we're starting to recognize them. So now we can dive into the agreements we want to replace maybe some of those negative agreements with. Okay, guys, and that is it for our first episode of the 4 agreements. Let's dive into our journal prompt for the week, and then we will go on to our weekly soul challenge. So, our first journal prompt is think of one belief you hold about yourself, something you've accepted as just the way you are. Where did that belief come from? Was it something someone told you, an experience you had, or an agreement you made somewhere along the way? Is it actually true, or is it a truth you inherited from someone else? Journal prompt number 2. Take an honest look at what you have been giving your attention to lately. What you consume, what you think about, what you talk about the most. How have those things been showing up in your daily life and habits? If you could redirect your attention towards one thing that would serve you better, what would it be? Journal prompt number 3. Think of something that used to terrify or intimidate you that you now do with confidence. What agreement did you break to get there? How did it feel when you did? Now look at your life today. Where is your discomfort quietly pointing you towards your next area of hidden power? So those are 3 specific journal prompts for you to write down. But of course, I've asked questions along in the episode. So if you wanted to answer any of those as well, feel free to do so. And let's get on to our weekly soul challenge. All right, and let's give our weekly soul challenge a spin. What do we got? We got soul pages. So I actually think this was the first one we had for our last book as well. So it looks like the universe wants us to do this again. Let me tell you guys what soul pages is all about. Soul pages is write 1 to 2 pages of stream of consciousness journaling before looking at your phone. So at least one time this week, wake up, don't look at your phone, just start writing and just write 1 or 2 pages worth and see what comes up for you. And maybe you can write about your belief systems. So let's do that this week. I'm going to have to do that myself. I'm going to have to put it in my calendar and figure out a date to do that. And that is it for this week on Soul Study. We did go through chapter 1. So remember, read chapter 2, which is the first agreement for next week, because we will be going over that. And remember, if you want to follow the podcast on a podcasting platform, make sure to follow it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon Podcast at Soul Study. You can also follow it on YouTube under Soul Study as well. Or if you want to follow me and know more about me, you can follow me on YouTube and Instagram at DreamLifeJules. Feel free to connect with me there, and we could talk about all this lovely, fun, juicy, mystical, woo-woo stuff. And if you still need to buy the book, remember to buy it in the link in the description below, because it is an affiliate link and it would help the podcast out so much if you guys bought it from there. Remember, if you buy the book from bookshop.org, the commission that I receive is actually matched and goes to an independent bookstore. So if you want to help your independent bookstores out there, make sure to grab the book through that link below. And, you can also grab it through the Amazon or Audible link as well that I have down there. So make sure you grab that book. Let's keep the ball rolling. And thank you guys so much for listening in. Remember, take what resonates, leave the rest. And I hope you have an amazing week becoming your happiest, healthiest, most magnetic self. And until next time, bye.